Hello everyone, welcome to HFY Beyond Terror. This channel is all about HFY and sci-fi stories, where humanity's underestimated and then proves...
Galactic Academy. The day the alarm meant war, the auditorium always smelled the same. Scrubbed metal, reprocessed oxygen, and a floral cleaner somebody in facilities was irrationally proud of. It hit Rena's soul like a punch every morning. She sat, where she always sat, top tier, back row, hoodie pulled up, boots hooked around the chair legs, while Professor Dillix traced equations in the air with a stylus that left pale blue ribbons behind. 200 cadets watched the holograms drift and spin, warp curvature, field stability, the boring math of moving faster than light without turning yourself into a physics problem. Around Rena, bodies came in every possible configuration. Scales and fur, feathers and chitin, lungs that pulsed visibly under translucent skin. Students tapped at projected keyboards or scratched notes onto slates or simply stared with the universal expression of "I would rather be eaten than take this exam." Rena was human, not one of many, not recently enrolled. Human as in the only one in the entire lecture hall on Asterion 12, a station that sat like a polished coin at the feline edge of civilized space. That made her either a novelty or a hazard depending on who was speaking and whether they were whispering. "Cadet Soul," Professor Illich said without turning. His voice had that silk over blades quality that only senior academics managed. 3. Pupils pivoted at once, fixing on her. "Your attention appears elsewhere." Rena didn't look up. "I'm listening." "Then perhaps," Illich said, "you can summarize what I just explained." Rena drummed 2 fingers against the desk's synthetic grain. "Warp pockets don't fail randomly. They collapse when gravitational shear exceeds the field's tolerance, which is why the safer protocols emphasize buffered curvature." Illich finished, almost disappointed she'd answered. "Correct." A ripple of amusement moved through the room. Not laughter exactly, more like a dozen species versions of it happening at once. Beside Rena, Sori thin-bodied, four-armed, and always chewing the end of her stylus when anxious, leaned closer. Her translator disc flickered against her collarbone. "You enjoy making him angry," Sori whispered. "I enjoy staying awake," Rena murmured back. "You should not antagonize faculty," Sori said. Her antennae lifted, then drooped. "Humans already have reputation." Rena's mouth twisted. "What reputation?" Sori's translator coughed like it was embarrassed. "Loud, aggressive, emotional, unstable, dangerous." Rena blinked. "Wow, really went for the greatest hits." Sori's antennae twitched. In what might have been sympathy. "Many are unsure if your species joining the community was wise." "It's been a year and a half," Rena muttered. "That's plenty of time to decide whether we're a tragic mistake." Sori made a soft sound, half humor, half nerves. "Most are still deciding." Rena stared at the floating equations and let her mind drift the way it always did when lectures became a lullaby. She thought about earth rain hitting hot pavement, the smell of fried street food, her little brother sending her terrible jokes because he missed her. She thought about the absurdity of sitting light years from home while someone made the universe sound like homework. That was when the alarm went off, not the gentle chime of a schedule shift, not the polite trill of a drill. This was a full-bodied screaming howl that seemed to vibrate through bone. Emergency lights slammed on, washing the auditorium in red. The holograms vanished. For a breathless second, nobody moved, every species' instincts trying to translate the sound into something they understood. Rena's hands tightened on the desk. The material creaked, and then cracked. She looked down. A fracture had spiderwebbed under her fingers, tiny shards lifting like splinters of ice. The desk was rated for species that outweighed her by a factor of 3. Sori grabbed Rena's sleeve with 2 hands. "Rena, What is happening? Rena didn't answer because her body had already answered for her. Not fear, not panic. Something older. Something that came from a planet where teeth and poison and gravity had all tried to finish the job evolution started. The station voice cut through the chaos, perfectly calm. Alert. Hostile forces detected. All personnel proceed to designated shelters. This is not a drill. Repeat. This is not a drill. Panic detonated. Chairs toppled. Wings flared. A scaled cadet vaulted the aisle and knocked over two others. Professor Ilix shouted for order, but his words drowned under the stampede. Rena stood so fast her chair rocketed backward and clanged against the wall. Nearby students flinched. Not at the alarm. At her. Sori clung tighter. Shelter. We must go. Go, Rena said, voice rougher than she meant. Now? Find a safe pod and stay there. And you? Rena swallowed. I'll be right behind you. They both knew that was a lie. Sori's eyes were huge, reflecting the red lights. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but a surge of bodies carried her away. Rena waited until the last of the auditorium emptied. Then she ran the wrong direction. The corridors of Asterion 12 were built to soothe, smooth metal, warm lighting, gentle signage in 20 languages. In the red wash of emergency mode, it looked like the inside of a wound. Teams in hazard. Suits rushed past. A maintenance drone shrieked as it dragged a cart of sealing foam. An armored engineer nearly collided with her and swore in a language that sounded like grinding stone. Wrong way, human. He barked. Rena didn't slow. She hit the observation deck access panel and slapped her student ID against it. The Thimfunda. Lock chirped and the door slid open. Apparently nobody had coded idiot with adrenaline and a Deathworlder's instincts into the emergency restrictions. Inside, the dome's window opened onto endless blackened ships. Not community patrol ships with soft curves and diplomatic markings. These were jagged, angular things, all spikes and plated armor, their weapon arrays glowing like coals. They slid around the station with predatory patience. Rena counted on reflex. 12, 13, no 15, as more emerged from behind the station's curve. A voice behind her said, Vark Raiders. Rena spun. A woman stood in the doorway. In station security armor, helmet tucked under one arm. Broad shoulders, close-cropped hair. Eyes that looked like they'd already seen the worst versions of today. Lieutenant Mara Holt, human, the only other one on the station. Rena had seen her twice before, once at a protocol briefing, once across. A mess hall always moving, always busy, always with the weight of responsibility pulling her posture straight. You should be in shelter, Holt said. So should you, Rena shot back. Holt's mouth twitched like she might have smiled if the universe had better timing. She stepped beside Rena and stared through the dome at the circling fleet. There. Going to fire, Rena said softly. Yes. Can we defend ourselves? Holt was silent long enough that the answer landed before she said it. The grid can repel pirates. It can scare off opportunists. It was never meant for a coordinated strike. Rena swallowed. We sent distress? Immediately. Holt's jaw tightened. Nearest community response is if everything goes perfectly 40 minutes. Rena stared at the enemy ships as if she could will them to hesitate. And we won't last 40. No, Holt agreed. We won't. Rena's heartbeat felt like a drumline. Then we buy time. Holt glanced sideways at her. Recognition flickered there something between annoyance and grim approval. You know what they call us, Holt said quietly. When they think. We can't hear. Rena breathed out. Deathworlders. Holt nodded once. Because our gravity breaks their bones. Because our immune systems treat half their bioweapons like allergies. Because our history is a list of disasters and we survived anyway. A pale, savage smile touched Holt's face. And because when someone brings war to our doorstep, we don't just hide. The first shot hit the station shields. The dome shuddered. A deep metallic groan rolled through the structure like a dying animal. Rena felt something unclip inside her chest, something she'd kept locked since arriving, because being the human meant being watched for any sign she'd become the stereotype. Now the stereotype had a target. "What do you need?" Rena asked. Holt drew a sidearm and offered it grip first. "Step 1, arm yourself. Step 2, follow me." Rena took the weapon. It was heavier than she expected, solid, real, final. "I should mention," Rena said as they moved, "I've never actually fired a gun." Holt barked a laugh that sounded like it came from somewhere raw. "You'll be fine. Humans pick things up fast when we're angry." They sprinted into the corridor as another impact rocked the station. Lights flickered. Somewhere far away, the sound of buckling metal tore through the air. Smoke drifted from a ruptured conduit. A wall panel had fallen inward, exposing sparking cables. A medic knelt beside a casualty, hands moving with frantic precision. Rena's training screamed stop, help, triage, but Holt didn't stop. And the instinct in Rena's gut said, if you don't end this, there will be no one left to help. They hit an emergency lift. Holt slapped a security card into the reader. Doors hissed open. "Where?" Rena demanded as they dropped. "Hangar," Holt said. "We have defense craft." "They're training models," Rena said. "Unarmed." Holt's grin sharpened. "Officially." Rena stared. "You smuggled weapons onto an academy station." "Borrowed," Holt corrected. "Long term." "That's incredibly illegal," Holt finished. "Yes, and incredibly convenient." The lift opened onto a nightmare. The hangar bay was a cathedral of metal and machinery, now filled with smoke and screaming. A breach scarred one wall where a boarding pod had punched through. Armored raiders poured out in a steady stream, firing energy weapons that scorched through crates and bulkheads. Holt moved like she'd been built for this. 3 shots so quick they blurred into a single sound, and 3 raiders dropped, helmet visors punched through. "Move!" Holt shouted. They sprinted from cover to cover, bolts sizzling past, heat snapping at Rena's skin. A raider stepped into their path. Rena didn't think. She raised the sidearm and fired. The recoil surprised her. The accuracy DIDN single quotes T. The shot hit center mass. The raider fell hard, armor clanging against deck plating. Holt shot her a look. Not bad. Rena's breath came out in a laugh that wasn't really laughter. "I'm terrified." "Good," Holt said. "Fear keeps you honest." They reached a secured storage unit. Holt pressed her palm to a biometric lock. The door slid open. Inside were racks of weapons, sealed ammo containers, and 2 compact fighter craft with their panels open, half maintained, half modified. Very much not meant for academic use. "Grab what you can carry," Holt said. "We're launching. 2 ships against 15? Rena asked. Holt's eyes didn't leave the hangar's chaos. "We're not winning. We're surviving long enough for help to show up." Rena glanced back toward the corridor that led to the shelters, toward Sori, toward 100 terrified students, toward a professor whose worst crime was being boring. "Okay," Rena said. "Let's buy time." They worked like they'd done it 1,000 times. Maybe it was adrenaline. Maybe it was the strange, shared human talent for becoming brutally efficient when backed into a corner. Rena climbed into the cockpit of a sleek Interceptor. The harness locked around her. A neural interface cable clicked into her implant. The ship woke. For a split second. Her senses doubled station noise, then the ship's hum layered over it, like stepping into a larger body. Holt's Voice crackled over comms. You ever flown anything real? Simulators, Rena said. Holt laughed. Congrats, today's your final exam. The hangar doors were damaged, half stuck. Holt's craft lit up its guns and tore the obstruction apart, and then they were out shooting into the endless black. Space combat wasn't like The Sims. The Sims didn't convey the way your stomach tried to crawl into your throat when the universe spun. The Sims didn't capture the sheer violence of acceleration or how beautiful destruction looked when it happened in silent vacuum. Vark fighters swarmed immediately. Rena banked hard. An energy bolt sliced past her wing by meters. She returned. Fire and watched, stunned, as an enemy craft blossomed into burning fragments. Holt whooped through the comm. That's it. Stay with me. They dove toward the largest ship, the flagship, its belly lined with weapon ports charging brighter by the second. That cannon, Holt said, voice suddenly flat. That's a station cracker. One shot and Asterion 12 becomes debris. Rena's mind ran the numbers and hated them. We can't outgun them. No, Holt said. So we out-crazy them. Rena swallowed. What's the one thing everyone agrees about humans? Holt's laugh was sharp. That we're insane. Perfect. Rena's hands tightened. On the controls, hit their sensor spine, blind them. Just a few seconds. And then, Rena's mouth went dry. Then I do something incredibly stupid. Rena, Holt started, but the words didn't matter now. Rena pushed her damaged interceptor into a burn that made warning lights strobe across her dash. The enemy fleet opened fire. Space became a web of death. Rena dodged not because she was a genius pilot, not because the Academy had trained her for this, but because her body understood survival in a way her brain didn't have time to translate on Earth. Predators had teeth. Here, the predators had plasma. The principle was the same. Holt streaked across the flagship's flank and hammered its sensor array. Sparks and debris erupted. The massive vessel's tracking systems flickered. Now, Holt yelled. Go! Rena dove under the flagship's ventral plating so close the hull filled her canopy. Her targeting system screamed for a lock. She ignored it and aimed manually at the power coupling feeding the main cannon, the weakest point. Briefly exposed while the weapon cycled out, she fired everything. Missiles, lasers, kinetic bursts. The coupling ruptured. Energy meant to be unleashed outward surged back into the cannon's core. The flagship didn't explode neatly. It tore itself apart in a violent internal failure, light blooming like a newborn star. The shockwave slammed Rena's craft like a fist and sent her spinning. Alarm shrieked. Her vision went white. When it cleared, she saw the enemy formation scatter, faltering, regrouping, suddenly on shore. Rena. Holt's voice crackled. You alive? Mostly, Rena gasped, gripping the controls like she could wrestle the ship back into order by force. 2 big ships down, Holt said, breath harsh. They'll hesitate. They're still here, Rena said, staring at the rest of the fleet tightening into a new pattern. They're recalculating, Holt replied. Which means we buy another minute. Rena's ship was failing in pieces. Shield capacity compromised. Weapons down to a fraction. One wing stabilizer was throwing errors that hurt in her teeth via the neural interface. She saw it then. Gap in the enemy's protective screen. 3 heavy cruisers holding position off the station's left flank, charging weapons to turn Asterion 12 into scrap. Holt, Rena said, voice too calm. I'm going in. Don't, Holt snapped. Get back here. 40 minutes, Rena said. That's all we need. That's an eternity. That's a breath, Rena corrected, and shoved her interceptor toward the gap. The cruisers spotted her. They fired. Rena dodged as long as physics allowed. Then one bolt clipped her starboard wing and tore half of it away. The ship spiraled, trying to turn her into a smear. Rena roared not words, just sound, and fought the controls. She wasn't praying to a god. She was praying to stubbornness, to muscle memory, to the cruel math of momentum. The ship stabilized, barely. She was inside their formation now, past their heaviest defenses. One missile left. One shot. Through the cruiser's reinforced bridge glass, she saw Silhouette's command staff turning, shock and fury written into alien angles. They hadn't expected anyone to be this reckless. They hadn't expected human. For home. Rena. Whispered not Earth exactly, not anymore, but the idea of it. The people she carried in her head, and fired. The missile struck dead center. The explosion didn't rip the cruiser apart. It didn't need to. It severed command. The cruiser's systems dropped into defensive mode. Weapons powered down. Engines shifted to holding burns. The other two cruisers broke formation, scrambling to compensate. And then the stars tore open. Warp. Signatures flooded Rena's sensor display, massive, disciplined, unmistakably community military. Reinforcements arrived in a line so clean it looked like someone had drawn it across space. Dreadnoughts, destroyers, fighters in swarming clouds. Raiders didn't stay to prove a point. They fled. Rena exhaled, the sound shaky and wet. Her interceptor chose that exact moment to quit. Systems died one by one. The cockpit temperature dropped fast. The quiet of space pressed in, heavy as water. Rena, Holt said, voice suddenly softer. Stay awake. Rescue is inbound. Rena tried to answer. Her mouth didn't cooperate. Pain radiated through her ribs. The edges of her vision darkened. She held on anyway because humans were good at that. Holding on past the point where it made sense. When she woke, she was in medbay wrapped in bandages and diagnostic patches. Every breath hurt like she was inhaling needles. Sori sat beside her bed, all four hands knotted together. When Sori saw, her eyes open, she made a sound the translator rendered as something between a sob and a laugh. You complete idiot, Sori said. Rena croaked. Hey. You saved everyone, Sori continued, antennae trembling. And nearly died multiple times doing it. The station network has already made you into a symbol. A symbol? Rena rasped. I hesitated. Also a meme. Rena closed her eyes. Of course. Sori leaned closer, voice quiet. They are talking about humans differently now, still afraid, but grateful, confused. Good, Rena whispered. Let them be confused. The door slid open. Professor Ilix entered, with the careful dignity of someone who hated admitting he'd been wrong. He stopped at the foot of Rena's bed and regarded her with all three eyes. Cadet Soul, he said formally, the council asked me to deliver a message. Rena braced herself. Expulsion, charges, deportation. The council extends its gratitude, Ilix said, unanimously. Additionally, they have voted to establish a new role, Coordinator of Emergency Response and Defensive Protocols. Rena stared at him. I'm a student. Yes, Ilix said, tone almost warm. And yet, when panic seized the hall, you acted while others froze. You understood a truth many of us avoid, that violence, controlled and directed, is sometimes the only answer to violence. He paused, then lowered his voice. I apologize for treating you as a liability rather than a protector. Rena let out a small, pained laugh. It's okay, I kind of am a liability. To the wrong people. Ilix's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. We are beginning to understand the distinction. After he left, Holt appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted and alive. The cut above her brow was sealed with medical adhesive. She carried herself like someone held together by grit and habit. Cadet Soul, Holt said, formal as a salute. Then she grinned. Or should I say coordinator? I haven't accepted, Rena said. Holt's grin didn't waver. You will. Rena stared up at the ceiling, at the gentle hum of a station that was still standing because two humans had refused to let it fall. The galaxy's still afraid of us, Rena said. Holt leaned back in the chair beside the bed. Fear keeps people careful. And gratitude? Rena asked. Holt's expression softened in a way that surprised her. Gratitude keeps them honest. Give it time, and honest turns into trust. Rena's ribs ached when she breathed. Her hands ached like they remembered the trigger, the controls, the cracked desk. I split a desk in half, she muttered. Holt snorted. I heard. Someone animated it. Rena groaned. I'm never recovering from this. You will, Holt said. Humans always do. Outside the medbay window, repair drones crawled over the station's hull like fireflies. Students would go back to lectures. Professors would complain about deadlines. Life would continue because it could. Rena closed her eyes, letting exhaustion pull her under. Somewhere deep in the station, the alarm systems were already being recalibrated. And Rena knew without any drama, without any grand prophecy, that if the alarm ever screamed again, she'd wake up and run toward it. Not because she wanted to be a monster, because sometimes the monster was exactly what kept the door from being kicked in.